What's up guys, this is VinylicPuma and today I'm back with another Borderlands History countdown, and in this episode I'm going to go over 10 of what I think are among some of the worst SMGs in Borderlands history. Now before we start, it's important to mention that SMGs for the most part are pretty excellent across all the games, especially in Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel, where SMGs are often seen as the superior alternative to assault rifles. However, there are a few duds out there, and whether it's because they're not good enough to justify their rarity, they're inferior to non-unique variants, or because they're just awful weapons, I'm going to go over all of the lousy SMGs from all three of the Borderlands games. But without further ado, these will be the top 10 worst SMGs in Borderlands history, starting now. Number 10. The Emperor SMG from Borderlands 2. While you could certainly do worse than the Emperor, you could also do a lot better. I would say that the primary reason that the Emperor makes this list is that it's arguably the weakest of the legendary SMGs in Borderlands 2, and it's also often a third place choice among other doll SMGs, being beat out by both the Sandhawk and even the Lascaux. The problem with the Emperor, though, is its fairly low fire rate, as this limits the weapon's DPS potential, and unlike something like the Sandhawk, which actually has an even lower fire rate than the Emperor doesn't get a projectile multiplier, which would increase its overall damage potential. I also think that the Emperor's special effect is just kinda lame. After all, the only thing that's really special about it is that it's got a really high burst count, which is normally 6, but can be boosted to 7 provided you have an Emperor that contains all dull parts. If you want the Emperor though, your best bet is to get it from either Assassin One, Watt, Wreath, or Roof at South Boss Demon Power during or after the Assassinate the Assassins side quest. And if you're curious, you can also get it when they appear during the Destruct Peak challenge as well. Number 9. The Commerce Smg from Borderlands 2. Much like the other weapons that can be obtained from the various assassins in South Boss Demon Power, the Commerce is a weapon that becomes obsolete very quickly. To illustrate this for you, if you compare a Commerce with a projectile convergence that has the same rarity and identical parts, the Commerce is getting about a 4% damage increase over a blue rarity variant. So while this is better, it's not really that much better. However, if you compare the Commerce with a purple rarity projectile convergence that has identical parts, you'll start to see just how much better the projectile convergence is. Not only are you getting superior base damage, but you're also getting slight improvements to accuracy and magazine size. And assuming you were able to obtain a gemstone variant of the projectile convergence, you would also be getting some additional critical bonus as well, making the Commerce totally obsolete. The only real upside to the Commerce is that it has an amazing looking weapon skin that's going to turn some heads. Otherwise, you're basically farming for a weapon that is statistically inferior to something that you could just get from any suitable loot source. But if you want something inferior, the Commerce SMG can be obtained from Assassin Watt during or after the Assassinate the Assassin side quest located in South Boss Demon Power. Number 8. The Marik's Mouth SMG from Borderlands the pre-sequel. So I have to admit that I hesitated to include this one on this list. This is basically because the Marik's Mouth has this really cool special effect that allows it to randomly apply damage over time effects in addition to its standard corrosive damage over time. In other words, you could just be firing this thing, and then all of a sudden, you've also applied a random fire, shock, or cryo damage over time. And obviously of these three, cryo is the most valuable, as the ability to randomly freeze an enemy this way can be a death sentence to some generic mobs. The problem is that the Marik's Mouth just has a low base damage for a Scav SMG. Compared to a non-unique variant with almost identical parts, you can clearly see that the damage is noticeably lower, clocking in at about 5,300 compared to the glitch variant's 8,900 or so. And while the fire rate boost is nice, the max size difference is just negligible. Ultimately, and as is, this gun just lacks damage, and while the DPS you can achieve is satisfactory for weaker mob enemies, things like badasses are going to take quite a while to kill. But if you want the Marik's Mouth, you can get one upon killing Rabbit Adams, who can be encountered during or after the Treasures of the Echo Madre side quest mission. Number 7. The Actualizer SMG from Borderlands 2. The Actualizer has the unfortunate position of being the Seraph sister weapon to the legendary Bitch SMG, which is consistently one of the best SMGs across the entire series. In Borderlands 2 in particular, the Bitch is tuned to perfection, complete with fairly high fire rates, high critical hit bonus, and the ability to obtain maximum accuracy within what seems like 1 or 2 shots. This means you can quickly and easily fire a number of projectiles into an enemy's face, yielding massive amounts of damage. The Actualizer, on the other hand, is supposed to be on a higher tier than Legendary, and simply just leaves something to be desired. Perhaps a better way to illustrate what is wrong with the Actualizer is to compare it with a Bitch of similar parts. As you can see, the only real thing the Actualizer has going for it is its better base damage. Virtually everything else on the Bitch is better, including accuracy, reload speed, and even magazine size. In fact, I'd go as far to say that the Actualizer is crippled by that poor reload speed, and overall, I think you'll find that the Bitch is just much easier to use, and is more efficient to use due to that higher accuracy, better reload speed, and just overall better ergonomics. Overall, I think you'll find that while the Actualizer is somewhat powerful, it's just incredibly awkward to use, and is just a poor weapon compared to the Bitch. But if you want one, you can acquire an Actualizer from the Seraph vendor in Oasis for about 150 Seraph crystals or so. Honestly though, if you have the patience, just farm a Bitch SMG from the bunker. Number 6. The Wildcat Smg from Borderlands 1. While I suppose it's not god-awful or anything, the Wildcat is a legendary SMG, and compared to other weapons in its class, like the Hellfire, Bitch, Savior, or even the Pearlescent Tsunami, I think you'll find that this particular weapon just comes up short. Without a doubt, one of the biggest issues with the Wildcat is it trades increases to magazine size for greatly decreased accuracy and increased reload times. So while you're getting a pretty great boost to the Wildcat's magazine size, which could lead to fairly decent DPS, it's going to be noticeably more difficult to hit what you're shooting at. Also, I think you'll find that being accurate with the Wildcat at anything beyond medium range is pretty difficult. And while the Wildcat does have the benefit of being able to spawn with a double accessory and potentially a better barrel, I think you'll find that it's simply outperformed by other multi-projectile SMGs like a Double Anarchy. Really though, I think the big thing with this particular SMG is that there are just a lot of other better SMGs out there. If you want something that's multi-projectile, go with the Double Anarchy. If you want a damage over time monster, go with the Hellfire. And if you want something that has pinpoint accuracy, go with the Bitch. I guess if you do want this weapon though, like most Borderlands 1 legendaries, it can be acquired from any suitable loot source. Number 5. The Gasser Smg from Borderlands 1. Much like the Wildcat, the Gasser is one of Borderlands 1's more underwhelming legendary SMGs. While the Gasser doesn't have issues with reload speed and actually gets a pretty decent base damage boost thanks to its unique barrel, the problem with the Gasser is that it's a burst fire weapon that has high recoil and high projectile spread, which not only makes the weapon less accurate, but it also makes the weapon's recoil that much harder to control. Typically, burst fire weapons are used at medium or longer ranges to deliver accurate fire directly into an enemy's face. However, with the Gasser, the decreased accuracy and increased recoil will make this a lot more difficult. In fact, you're probably going to be better off with virtually any decent combat rifle by comparison. Ultimately though, it's the combination of the burst fire along with the poor accuracy that makes this weapon bad. After all, it could have been a great alternative to a combat rifle for SMG users, but it's ultimately being held back by its below average accuracy and recoil. I guess if you're curious, you can acquire this weapon from any suitable loot source. Maybe try it and see what you think, but I think you're just going to go back to other far superior SMGs. Number 4. The Crit Smg from Borderlands 2. What actually has the potential to be a great SMG is utterly ruined by its special effect. For those of you that don't know, the crit can randomly slip out of the player's hands while reloading it, Or in other words, the gun will just randomly drop from your hands in the middle of a reload, forcing you to quickly pick it up to keep using it. And while I sort of get why the crit was designed like this random slipping while reloading makes the weapon too unreliable to use in most builds. And as I implied, this is kind of a shame because the crit is basically an improved version of the good touch with better base damage and improved critical hit bonus. Otherwise, there's not really a whole lot else to this particular weapon, and if you want a crit, you have to complete the Critical Fail side quest from the Dragon Keep DLC. Number 3. The Cullen SMG from Borderlands 2 and the Frostfire SMG from Borderlands the pre-sequel. While these aren't the same weapon and both exist in their own separate games, I'd argue that both are so similar that they might as well be included together. So the Cullen is a Borderlands 2 dual elemental slag and shock weapon that slags the player provided that they have the weapon equipped in hand, while the Frostfire is a weapon from the pre-sequel that is a fire and cryo dual elemental weapon that causes the player to be randomly self-frozen. Either way, this double-edged side effect where the player incurs a status effect is pretty bad. However, I'd argue that it's probably the worst on the Cullen, as self-slag makes the player extremely vulnerable to incoming damage. Also, unlike the Frostfire, where the effect seems somewhat intermittent, the Cullen's self-slag is always active, so as long as the weapon is equipped, you're going to be taking a lot more damage than usual. It's a good thing that we have the community patch and community patch mods on PC, as both weapons can be improved by simply removing the self-slag and self-freeze for the Cullen and the Frostfire respectively. But if you would like to go ahead and obtain a Cullen SMG, you can acquire one in Borderlands 2 as a quest reward for completing the entire line of clan war quests and by siding with the Zaffords. As for the Frostfire, it's obtained by completing the bestest story ever told side quest mission on normal mode. And for whatever reason, if you complete this particular quest on another difficulty, you can't obtain this weapon that way. Number 2. The Boxy Gun from Borderlands the pre-sequel. If you're looking for an abomination of an SMG, then look no further than the Boxy Gun from the pre-sequel. This is the only weapon in any of the Borderlands games that can explode when you try to reload it, and as you can imagine, this weapon can be extremely disorienting to use, especially if you're a big fan of TDR weapons and you're used to them actually working properly. Plus, the more ammo that is in the magazine, the more likely that the Boxy Gun will explode in your hand, making this SMG even more counterintuitive to how most regular TDR weapons work. In exchange for this bizarre reload, this weapon will always come in shock, it'll have above average base damage, and the ability for the projectiles to ricochet. Honestly, why couldn't this weapon have had the ability to regenerate ammo or something? That way I could at least be somewhat willing to overlook its really obnoxious reload. I guess if you're masochistic and you want to acquire this weapon, you can either receive it from the second or badass round of the Destructed Madness side quest in the Holodome DLC. Hopefully, this weapon, or a weapon like it, won't return in Borderlands 3, because this is a truly awful TDR SMG. And finally, number 1, the Bane SMG from Borderlands 2. While this may venture into the realm of personal opinion, I think the Bane is one of the worst SMGs in Borderlands history. While it may sport superior base damage compared to other Hyperion SMGs, it's plagued by low accuracy, and you have to fire what seems like half the magazine in order to achieve the Bane's maximum accuracy potential. These traits alone would disqualify me from recommending it. However, these issues are compounded by the Bane's utterly obnoxious voice module and the decreased movement speed the player has to incur while the weapon is equipped in hand. Of these two traits, though, it's the movement speed that's likely to kill you, as decreased mobility makes it more difficult to get out of the way and get to safety if you get into a stressful situation. Plus, when you consider that there are other Hyperion SMGs out there that don't have any of these problems, whether it be the poor accuracy, movement speed, or the annoying voice and movement speed, why would you go out of your way to even use this gun? Ultimately, the Bane just sucks. maybe you'll get a couple of laughs out of it for a short period of time. However, if you're looking for a great or even half-decent weapon, the Bane is something that you should just avoid. And if you want it for some reason, the Bane is acquired by completing the Bane side quest that can be started in Sanctuary after you've completed the Once and Future Slab main quest mission. Alright guys, I think that's going to pretty much wrap up this particular video. If you liked this video, feel free to leave a like, and also feel free to leave a comment letting me know what you think are some of the worst SMGs in Borderlands history. So leave that in the comments below. Otherwise, click the bell to join the notification squad, and as always, thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Take care, and I'll see y'all next time.